Welcome to Insight with Moonshadow. I am Moonshadow, an integrative holistic therapist, intuitive shaman, interfaith minister, and evangelist with over 30 years of experience in the healing field, and that is in the US as well as internationally. And my intention here is to help you connect to your inner self and the world around you, making you a better person and making you better in the world. So now, today is a very interesting topic, a dark topic. It's a unique topic. You don't hear about this or see about this every day in normal life. But if you are more on the path of being more mindful and wanting to know the best about yourself, then shadow work will come up. Now, if you think about it, all of us are built up of different parts. We are amazing creations. We are amazing machines. We are amazing, just the way we're built. We have different polarities. We have masculine and feminine polarities in us. We have our mind, body, and spirit, our etheric bodies. We have the physical and the mental and the spiritual, correct? But there's more to it than that. We also have the light and the dark, the conscious and the unconscious. Now, when you're thinking about it from that perspective, the light and the dark, it's not necessarily good and bad. It just means in the forefront and the background. Those are the big differences here. So when I say shadow work is a bit different. It's about taking a look at what the not so pretty parts of who you are and how you're built in your childhood, and then bringing it to the forefront of yourself, for yourself. And then at that point, you can really utilize finding what makes you you. So can you find answers in the darkness? Absolutely. Carl Jung, which is a prominent, most of us know of Jungian psychology, he's the one that theorized the shadow self. Now, the shadow self, if you really, really think about it, just as an example, you have your conscious mind and you have your subconscious, right? So say, for example, this card here is you. Your conscious self only really takes about this right here. This is your conscious self. It's just that top, just this little tiny bit, just this little corner. This is all the subconscious. Now that makes a huge difference. They say that if we use 5% of our brains, and you're right, Chrissy, it is the tip of the iceberg. They have said that if you use more than 5% of your brain, you'd be able to move things. If you use more than 5% of your brain, 10% of your brain, you'd be able to do so many things mentally just with your brain. That's it. Like, oh man, I need my keys. So theoretically, the Jedi from Star Wars would be utilizing a lot more of their brain than the average person because they'd be using the Force. They'd be connecting to the Force. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of intuitive people, a lot of psychic people, a lot of people that work within or beyond the veil, if you will, they work with more than just their brain, or more than just that little bit of their brain. Now, Tony is sharing here, I know I'm starting to find some answers despite of the darkness. It's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. I'm starting to see all the edge pieces and most of the inside ones. I'm slowly starting to put everything all together. And it takes a while. Doing shadow work is not easy. You are going to be vulnerable. So let's rewind a little bit. Let's go to what actual shadow work is. Now, there are things that if someone does something that really annoys you, there's a good chance that that is within you. That is something, a variable or a dynamic that you have within yourself that you've put away. Also, too, I've spoken in prior shows about the inner child and about nature and nurture. But the inner child also puts things away. We all put things away in boxes in our subconscious, willingly and unwillingly. So in looking at it from that perspective, a lot of times, things that it's almost like, I don't know if I'm going to use this, so I'm going to put it away. That's a conscious decision. But these decisions are a bit different. If you had a really, really difficult childhood, or someone really, really made you feel horrible, you may stow a lot of the stuff into your shadow self, into the dark side or the dark corners of your subconscious mind, even though a lot of us say, oh yeah, I'm over it, I'm a better person for it. But are you? I challenge that. Did you really go in there with a flashlight? Did you put light to dissipate that darkness and look into those corners? Did you look at, okay, what makes me me? What affected me so harshly or so badly? And Chrissy, you're right. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Not always. And it doesn't. Sometimes it can make you more vulnerable. It can make you weaker. Sometimes it can make you stronger. It really depends on your will and your mentality and who you are as a person. So going within the dark and doing shadow work, and I'll tell you, everything that I've brought onto this show, I've done myself. This is definitely a practice as I preach as I practice. It's pretty transparent. It's an open book. So if any of you have a question further on this topic, you can contact me. But this is work that we all need to do. I'm not saying you choose to do, it's you need to do. Because in those times where you're alone and there's no one to call, and you find yourself really hurting, that's your shadow self coming up. Those are things coming up from out of the corners of your periphery, affecting you and altering you, and reminding you that you need to get this stuff done. You need to do this work. Now, one of my very dear friends, in fact, a few of my dear friends are in therapy, and I tend to be the surrogate therapist. In one way, shape, or form, I'm usually mirroring what the therapist said or saying what the therapist is going to say, something along those lines. So obviously there's some connection to me and these therapists, these psychiatrists and psychologists, and these really powerful people. And it humbles me to even think that I could connect in such a grand scheme. Well, yeah, it makes me feel very interested, because doesn't really make a difference with schooling. Sometimes it's just being connected to the great mystery, and a lot of times people are connected to the great mystery. They may not even know it. So does the degree matter? Formal education is good, don't get me wrong, but to know that a few people are connecting on the same mindset, the same level, that's pretty hardcore stuff. Now Cindy's sharing, in the corners of my mind I sit, but a mere child of 9 years old, kneels curled up upon my chest, my head bowed, resting on my knees, tears stain the floor as they fall. For I'm in a room full of boxes, it's dark, and I know not what is each box, but they control me. Someday I shall empty these boxes someday. That's beautiful. And sad. This is a perfect example, and thank you so much for sharing that, Cindy. I know that means a lot, and that's a piece she wrote. Cindy's also an aspiring writer, not published yet, but soon to be, I'm sure. But that's one of her pieces that she wrote. Now, that's a perfect example of working within the shadow self and doing shadow work. You have to go into places that you don't want to go. There are places that I don't want to do, the things that I don't want to do, or places I don't want to go, but you have to be responsible for being the best you are. Think about this. If you want to be the best you have to clear out the dead wood. You have to go into the dark abyss. Because to be honest with you, I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for the darkness. I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't due to the adversity. If I was raised with a silver spoon in my mouth, if I was raised with being entitled and not ever having to worry about anything, I'd be a different person. And I'm not judging anyone that has lived that way, because I'm not about judging. But I'm saying that the difference, who I am as a person now, as opposed to who I would be if I didn't have the adversity and the challenges, I'd be a very different person. And Cindy's sharing here, and although it sucked to be in the dark, I wouldn't change what I've learned. And this is the thing, and this is what it boils down to here, is that when you're doing shadow work, you're looking, and you don't have to share it with people unless you want to. You don't have to be transparent. I do a bit of that. Most of what I learn and most of who I am, I share. But I'm not going to say there isn't a part of myself that is still in the shadow that I don't share with just anybody. That's saved for myself, maybe my inner circle, a couple people that I really truly trust. But this is who you are. This is all part of you. So in those dark corners of who you are, those are the things that really make a difference. And those are the moments and those places and those memories, they actually can propel you into be even better and to be even shinier, be even brighter. Because what happens? And you've all heard me say this before. If you take a candle into the darkness, it lights pretty well, right? But if you take a halogen spotlight into the darkness, guess what? You're blowing that darkness up into daylight, right? And this is part of it. This is one of the major reasons why I brought shadow, the topic of finding answers in the darkness, working with shadow work today, is because what I talk about when I share in my show, I also do myself. And I've been doing a lot of shadow work, especially lately as well. So this is my being able to share with you a lot of what I've experienced. Because if you really, really ponder this for a moment, you are the best that's ever happened to you, and you are the worst that's ever happened to you. Now, what you do with this is a whole different thing. That's the difference. That's what makes the difference here. What are you going to do with the good and not so good parts of who you are? Because anyone that says that they're all bright and shiny all the time, there's darkness. There's a lot of things that they've experienced where there could be as light as, being fired from a job, to being, betrayed by family or a lover or a friend. All of it changes us. But what we do with shadow work is what's going to make the difference. So how can we how can we make the difference? How can we change this? What can we do to make it better? One of the things we can do is to be open, Working with the inner child. That's a huge thing. That's huge. Gigantic. And in working with your inner self and going within shadow work and working with your inner child and working with all those parts that you don't really want to work with, that will make a huge difference in the world, in how you portray yourself, how you portray other people, how people trigger you, because that's also part of it too. Someone may trigger you, and then you realize, whoa, wait a minute. Now, when something happens like that to me, I try to see the lesson in it. What am I supposed to know by this? Is this mine, or is this other person's? Take ownership. Take ownership of what it is. If it's yours, then so be it. Let's get to work. Gloves come off. Grab the flashlight and look into that moment. If it's not yours, then okay. It's someone else's shadow self. And all I can do is wish them well, send good juju to them, and send unconditional light, juju, love, whichever you want to call it. Send it to them for them to get better. But really, looking at it from the outcome, you could make so much change with that. You can change so many things with doing shadow work. So now, I know I challenge you guys, and I know I poke and prod you a little bit. It's all with love. It really, truly is. But when I do that, it's just so you could look deeper within yourself and you can find the parts that need more polish. I do the same thing every day. You don't have to do anything. Just the fact you being here and just listening is big and it's important. But deep down inside, you'll know whether or not to connect with it or not connect with it. And Christian is sharing here, I was taught if you point one finger at one person, it's 3 pointing back at you. And it's true. And it's funny that you say that, but if you really think about it, it's very, very true. So if something happens in your life, there is a good chance that either it's bringing it to your attention for one reason or another, for you to take a look at it. It could be a lesson for you, or it may be that you need to connect with somebody. You need to be able to take care of that. You maybe need to find help for that person, or look for help for yourself. So there's that. Chrissy. She's sharing, I was so blonde I had to do it to count them. Yeah. So this is a big part of it. Looking within yourself, and again, it doesn't have to hurt. It doesn't have to. All it takes is just being more mindful. I know you hear me talk about being mindful and being balanced and really owning your stuff and all of this. And it's a constant. It's a constant thing for you to be the best person you could be. And that's really, really key. That's really, really key here. So for that to be, it doesn't necessarily have to hurt. It's more or less bringing your attention to those dark parts of yourself. Like, okay, here's a perfect example of shadow work. If you go and you have 3 or 4 relationships, and in looking at them a little more deeply, you find that they're all very similar. They're all very similar. So now you look at the similarity or the common denominator in those relationships, and that could be something that was in your shadow self. Maybe at that moment in time, just as an example, let's just go as an example. You've got someone named Mary. Okay. Mary has had a few relationships, and she's had difficult ones. And the last 3 were very, very difficult. She thought, oh, they were just jerks, or they were just wrong for me. Okay. Well, if Mary becomes a little more mindful, she looks into it and she goes, wait a minute. Those 3 guys were a lot alike. What is in those 3 relationships that I need to look at? And that's something to think about. Welcome, Hugh. Welcome back, Terry. So when you have those type of, so in that situation, in the hypothetical version of Mary, she has those 3 relationships, right? She has to find the common denominator, or that one dynamic that's in the middle of all of them, and look within her shadow self to find out what could have I done, or what was part of my makeup or my shadow self that may have attracted those kind of people. And sometimes it takes a little homework. Sometimes you have to go back in and go, okay, you know what? And now in the case of Mary, I didn't value myself, said Mary. I thought I was never good enough. So guess what? So now she may be manifesting or attracting these guys that are also going to not treat her kindly, or not treat her well, or treat her the way deep down inside, even though she doesn't consciously treat herself that way, treat her the same way. So now that's just an example of going into your shadow self. And even recently, I've had a few challenges where, in conversations I've had, where it's like, okay, what is this? What part of this is mine? What part of this is the other person or persons? And you take a look at that. And this is all important. Now, once you become more and more mindful and work within the mind, body, spirit persona of who you are, what makes you you, then you find that there's less darkness, there's less challenge, there are less obstacles, and you get better and better and better and better. This is all a more reason to go into shadow work, to finding the parts that make you you. Here's a little experiment a little technique you can use. When you do that, have conversation with yourself. Not in public, people might think you're crazy. But when you're alone, have a conversation with yourself. You can use a mirror. That's all. It's another technique that you can utilize. But have a conversation with yourself, and what has stopped me up? What belief systems or what things that I have stored in my shadow self that have stopped me from getting where I need to be, or being the person that I need to be? And you'd be amazed what the higher self can come up with. And I've suggested journals, and I've suggested a lot of that too. And with anything, if you have any questions, you can contact me. My DMs are open. You can contact me via email, and I'll do my best to help, to assist. And of course, there's, scheduling for some time for a consult and a session as well. Okay. All right, Q. Exactly. And it is comical. So in dealing with the shadow self and dealing in shadow work, these are just things that once you actually get it and start working, it becomes easier and easier every day. And it's kind of like working within a room with a lot of boxes in it. You haven't seen those boxes in years, so you pull out one box and open it. There could be good memories, there could be bad memories, there could be good things, bad things. You never know. You never know, because you're just opening up a box, you're untaping the box and you're opening it up. But then you look at the box itself, each and every box, and you start saying, well, I don't need this anymore. This can go. That can go. And you purge each box. As you do that, you're going to find yourself becoming lighter, becoming better, and you notice the room starts to get more empty. This is part of what shadow work is all about. So I do challenge you guys to actually try this and work with it, because it's something where you could change a lot of yourself, a lot of the triggers that you have, you know? Now, I have a question from Tony. Can your shadow self be a younger version of yourself? Absolutely, absolutely, without a doubt. In fact, the shadow self, if you talk to a lot of different therapists and a lot of people that do healing work regarding shadow work, which I'm also one of them, a lot of the time it could be something that happened to you as a younger self, as a younger child, that you put aside, you put away, you blocked off, you shut up, you shut it up, and you closed it up and you put it off into your shadow self. So can it be a younger version of yourself? Absolutely. You could say, for example, you could be someone that was left alone, neglected for a moment. Whether it was truly meant or not meant, that's a whole other different topic. But in that sense, you were neglected. And that part of you, whether it be 8, 9, 10, 11, however the age is, younger, that part of you saying, no one cares for me, no one loves me. Now that causes a memory. And that creates a memory, that creates something in itself. And you put that into your shadow self. You put that into the subconscious. Now fast forward, you could be, 20, 30, 40 years old, even 60, 70, 80 years old. And all of a sudden somebody kind of forgets your birthday or does something like that. All of a sudden what happens? That brings that same moment back from when you were, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever. And it brings you back to that same moment. Now you don't realize it or remember it. As an adult, you might just get annoyed because someone forgot this or didn't think of you or whatever. However, that brought back something from your shadow memory, from your subconscious. That brought something back that triggered. And triggers are everywhere. It's up to you, as well as it's up to me, to get rid of as many triggers as possible. There's good triggers too, by the way. Like a song, first time you fell in love. But the triggers that are going to cause disruption, and the triggers that are going to cause you to end up in the dark, not feeling well, physically ill, all of that are those triggers they need to work with. And you build on those. You take those and you take them apart. And going into your shadow self, going into doing some shadow work does make the difference. Like a lot of people, for example, like jealousy. Welcome, Ariel. Like with like jealousy, for example. Some people will view jealousy as cute, or that means a person loves me. Jealousy by default isn't the greatest emotion in the world. It's insecurity. It is. Because if you really think about it, from the shadow aspect of it, what jealousy is not something cute. It's actually insecurity. So if you ask a thief what their biggest insecurity is, they're going to say to be robbed. It's true. If you ask somebody that's been someone that's a cheater or an adulterer, they're going to say, more than likely, they're going to say that they don't want someone to leave them or something to cheat on them because they've done it themselves. Now, that's a perfect example of looking at it from the shadow perspective. So when you look at it from that sense, what could be possibly good or what you perceive as good, and this is a big thing, it's about perception. It could also have a shadow side to it where you have to take a look at it. And it is possessive. Now, I myself, I can personally say that I am protective and possessive of people, but it's a very different way. I want them to do well. I want them to be well. I want them to have a wonderful life. However, lack of judgment. You can't judge somebody for how they choose to live their life. Also, in a sense of being protective or possessive, they still have their own free will and their own decisions. And just to take care of to finish off the jealousy aspect of it, if you happen to be in a room and someone introduces, and let's just say hypothetical situation, you have a couple, you walk into a room and a couple, you walk up to this female, you know, a girl, you know, and she says, "This is John, my husband." Okay. Now what just happened here? Now there's a difference. Now she said, "This is my husband, John." Now let's take this apart. Let's take this apart for a second. If she said, "This is John, my husband," now she is not taking ownership of possession right away, is she? She's saying, "This is John. John is a person, and he's also my husband." Now she flips it around and said, "This is my husband, John." There's a whole different there's a different twist to this, isn't it? The twist is, this is my husband. This is my husband. Don't even think about it. And his name is John. So words mean something. Words mean something, people. And you may not even realize that it's happening, but it's happening. So when I learned this a long time ago, I realized in my relationships, I'd introduce the person first. They could have been my closest and best person on the whole entire planet that I love dearly. But guess what? This is who they are. And they're also my friend. Okay? Because I used to do that. I did that too until I realized, and I looked in my shadow self and I realized, well, wait a minute. I'm kind of taking ownership a little bit. And it wasn't meant in any kind of in a bad way. It's just, I realized, whoa, wait a minute. That sounded kind of like I was taking ownership. Like, this is my friend, or this is my lover, or this is my girlfriend. Huh. This is my parent. This is my sister. Interesting, isn't it? And Ariel is saying she never thought of it that way. Shedding a little light. Now, Chrissy's also sharing here, I lost my dad in February 1996, and I was turning 30 in March. I haven't been celebrating my birthday since. I also had a two-year-old and a 6-year-old kid, so I didn't have time to mourn. Yeah. And so that's what happens when things like that happen. You tossed that information, those feelings, you toss them in a box and you throw them into your shadow, into the part of your shadow self. You throw them into your subconscious because time needs to move forward, right? We need to move on. Now, fast forward, here you are sitting here now in my show with me, and now it's brought back into your memory going, wow, you know what? I never really dealt with that box. I never really dealt with that feeling or that experience. And this is the thing about shadow work. But see, when you do realize it, and then you do know, then you learn from it. And then you excel from it. And then you process it. And you move forward with it. So are you going to have destructive friendships or relationships all your life if you do shadow work? Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, it's going to get better for you. You're putting those things in the past where they belong. You're clearing them out. You're purging those things. You still get the lesson from them. You still learned a lesson. But now it's unpacking the baggage, right? And once you get rid of those things, then you can move forward. And I can understand that. I can understand that, Chrissy. Chrissy's saying that she's tried many times, but she can't kick it. That requires probably a little more inner work. Not all of it is easy. And when you're doing shadow work, more than not, it's usually difficult. More than not, it's not an easy thing. It'll make you hurt. It'll make you cry. It'll tear up some of the most vulnerable parts of you, and bringing that up to the surface. There are times when I do some shadow work that no one hears or sees or hears of me for days, because it can bring up some really crazy stuff, some deep stuff. And Ariel is saying sometimes with that stuff you can only handle working through little by little. And absolutely, I am not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you that you should bring it all up, one shot deal, like boom. You know what I mean? You don't unpack a whole room full of things you don't know what's in the boxes and put them out into your living room. Don't ever do that. Personal experience. Don't do it. Hashtag just don't do it. Take one box at a time. Exactly. Yep. You're going to get sick. Exactly. Exactly. If you eat the whole cake at once, you're going to get sick. And it does. So this is the whole thing. So I'm not telling you, this is not about me sending you guys into it, into your shadow selves, and then being in fetal position. This is not about that. This is about when a situation or a moment happens and it's not a good moment, or it's a great moment, whichever it may be, and you think to yourself, okay, now why would I feel overtly emotional about this situation? Go into your shadow self, do some shadow work, look into it. And yes, and I agree with you completely, Ariel. It's sometimes way too easy to go deep. I'm very much like that. If I go in, I'm in. I'm usually neck deep within a second. And it's also part of what makes me who I am. I am the light. I am the shadow. I am all those things. I'm all those things. I wouldn't be able to share what I share with you all if I didn't do the work. If I didn't inquire, if I wasn't inquisitive of who I was, I wouldn't have known. I would have never known. So bringing it back, so to looking at shadow work as a whole, this isn't something that you should be ashamed or faulted by. This is actually some really intense, great stuff to get into. It's not great, it's not fun. But the whole thing is, though, think about it. If you have a room full of crap and you start cleaning out the room, eventually you have a really bright, clean, shiny room that you could do a lot of things with. So look at that from that. So you're taking ownership of that part in your subconscious and bringing it to your consciousness. You've just gained real estate. You've just gained another bright spot in your life, in yourself, in your persona, in your spirit. right? And that's important. It's like kind of like going into your fridge every now and then and looking at the expiration dates, you know. I just did that recently and found like a couple of, there wasn't terrible, but ketchup and mustard, which I haven't used much lately, and it was expired. And I've got room for new ketchup and mustard. So if you think of it from that analogy, you know, this is the thing. You kind of want to look at your shadow self as a space where the more you work through, and it can take, oh, Chrissy just said she threw out 3 ketchups the other day. Yeah, because you bought a new one and you left the 2 expired ones in the, yeah. Exactly. 2015. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't ingest something from way back in 2015 because we're almost in 2017 now. So yeah, that's not good. I'm courageous, and brave, but not that brave. Definitely not. But in working with all of you, the good, or, okay, let's not think of it as good and bad. Let's think of it as easy and hard. Easier challenges and the harder challenges. Or the more pleasant and the not so pleasant. In looking at yourself fully, with both eyes open, with your heart open, whether you do that with the help of a therapist, which I totally subscribe to, working with someone that knows what they're doing so you don't end up alone. A support system is huge, so important. It is really paramount in you having a good support system when you do this, even if it's someone that's a friend or your spouse or a sibling, someone that understands you or is willing to just, you know, hold your hair back. And you know exactly what I mean by hold your hair back. Because it's a lot like getting sick. Exactly, Chrissy. Sometimes it doesn't take someone saying a word, just someone to say, you know, I've got your back. I'm here for you. I'll listen. And in working with your shadow self and doing shadow work, then you'll realize, wow, if this didn't happen, I wouldn't be, you know, if this bad thing didn't happen, if I wasn't bullied, then I wouldn't be such an advocate for people bullying others. Here's another example. There was a woman that she contracted cancer. And this story is going back quite a while ago. So she had contracted cancer. And she was a very proactive person. She was active and vibrant. So she decided to become a spokesperson for cancer, start support groups, all of that. Now, it took some time and treatment and therapy and everything. But what ended up happening was she no longer had cancer. She was in remission. So she now went from having cancer to being a cancer survivor. Now, let's think about this for a second. If she never contracted cancer, she wouldn't have never been an advocate for cancer. Therefore, it would have been, she may have gone down that path a different way. So think about this. She no longer, well, as far as the story ended from when I heard the story, she no longer had cancer. She was still on these support groups. She still did the work. But now she could do it with a healthier mindset, with a healthier body. Now she can go further and really work with it and really do some major work with it without a timeline, without a fatal death, you know, or a fatal deadline, so to speak. But she would have never, none of this would have ever happened if she didn't go within herself. And she had this happen from her shadow side, her contracting cancer. So this is a perfect example of something happening that wasn't a pleasant thing, but something pleasant came out of it. So in that same, utilizing this as a metaphor in the same way, by going into your past, by going into who you were, by going into those triggers and those moments of time where it upsets you, you may find what's going to propel you, what's going to strengthen you, what's going to amaze you. One person I worked with a long time ago, very interesting person, used to work out, eat all the right foods, everything. And she still couldn't lose the weight, ever. She couldn't lose the weight. So what ended up happening was she ended up calling me, and I ended up working with her for quite some time. And early on, I realized that this was not physical weight. This was manifested physical weight. And she also had some issues with family heredity too, of course. So that didn't help. But the fact was, it was emotional. It was weight that was manifested from her emotions, from her not giving herself enough credit, from her not giving herself enough strength. She never felt strong enough. She never felt good enough, all of that. So I asked her the question early on. And the question was, have you ever seen a skinny lumberjack? And she looked at me and was like, huh? Because utilizing coyote medicine, it kind of comes in from left field. You know what I mean? You don't even know. It can come from the left, come from the right. And I said, well, have you ever seen a skinny lumberjack? And she said, no. I said, describe a lumberjack to me. Now, this is during our sessions. She said, well, they're big and they're muscular and they can carry all kinds of big, heavy things and logs and such. And I said, have you ever thought, maybe for 1 second, you're an emotional lumberjack? You're taking on other people's stuff, other people's issues and burdens, and you're carrying them for them. And all of a sudden, she paused. She stopped. She's speechless. And this wasn't someone that could be speechless easily. She's speechless. And she said, I never really thought of it that way. So once we get to that part in her shadow self, then she realized things were able to change. And then within the work that we did, she ended up losing between 20 and 30 pounds. How's that, Jenny Craig? Most of that was emotional weight. Most of it was emotional weight. Now, Christy also shared, if I hadn't had 2 or 3 depressions, I wouldn't be this good in English, because all I talked to was people online from the United States. And that's another cool thing about how the world is today. You can connect with people from all over. I have people from all over the world that come and see my show live, as well as, in YouTube and on my website, And that warms my heart to know. And I've got some very, very close friends from different places in the world. I've seen their kids get older. I've seen their kids grown up. I visited them, sat in their living rooms, ate with them, had coffee in the morning with them. And it all started from this two-dimensional world. So this is a big part of it. Sometimes you have to look harder within yourself to find the answer. And when you get triggered, it's something to look at. This is why I usually suggest a journal. This is why I usually suggest talking to someone, finding someone you trust. And Chris is saying, yeah, you had my friends from Norway and Holland this summer, yeah? And all of this makes a difference. All of it really, really, really does. So in shedding light into the darkness, it can look pretty scary. It can take you to a place you don't necessarily want to be. I do not suggest you do it alone. I don't suggest you do it alone. Tell someone you can trust. Someone that's not going to judge you when you're vulnerable. Someone that will just listen if they need to. And someone to tug on you when you need to do as well. Someone to challenge you in what you're thinking as well. But it can be terrifying. And the more intuitive and the more in touch with who you are, the more terrifying it could be. It's not necessarily easier. Just because I've been doing it for over 30 years doesn't mean that I'm more used to it, but doesn't mean it's any better. It doesn't mean that it hurts any less. I just accessed that part quicker. I unlocked it. The door is there. And I go through the door more often than some other people may. So this is a big part of it. So if you really think about it, you are a lot of things. And you are a lot of aspects. And you are multifaceted, no different than a crystal. A crystal may be a crystal, but all those facets mean something. Every single one of those facets means something. And sometimes you have to look at the facets. Sometimes you have to look at the inclusions. Sometimes you have to look at the color, the oddity, the weirdness. Because no one crystal is the same. And neither are we. We may be similar, but we're never always the same. Now, Ariel is sharing here, if you're scared of the dark will still be scary, even if you have a flashlight. Oh yeah, you can have a spotlight the size of a truck and it can still be scary. Because that little tiny bit of, that little corner of darkness, that's pitch darkness. You still want to go in there. You reach in there, who knows what could be in there? Some kind of bug or something. You never know. I know quite a few people that I've helped that were scared of water, especially dark water. And they were scared of dark water because of the unknown. That's working with shadow work. That's working in the shadow self. Is actually going in and starting off by doggy paddling in and then diving in and finding out what is in the dark. That's not uncommon, Ariel. I know quite a few people that are terrified of dark water. And spiders. And also Dawn Maria is saying she's a big fraidy cat when it comes to being afraid of the dark at night. Exactly. And a lot of children, speaking also of darkness and the unknown, a lot of kids, and this is throughout the ages, are afraid of putting their, legs over the side of the bed because they don't know what's underneath the bed. I can tell you what's underneath my bed is dust monsters. I get dust monsters. Like some people have cute dust bunnies. No, I've got dust monsters. Big ass dust monsters. and I should probably take care of those. And Ariel is saying, I'm 25 and I used to think I still don't put my legs over the side of the bed. And she's 25. Cindy used to think the little people would grab the blanket and crawl up like Gulliver's Travels. Yeah. And Tony's afraid of those silver things with the long legs, the back ones being the longest ones. Yeah. And this is the part of the unknown. You know, Dawn Marie's will say, I used to line up my stuffed animals around me so I'd be protected at night while sleeping. That's kind of looking at your totems. You were probably doing some shamanic work way back when, Dawn Marie, without even knowing it. If you really think about it. I recently did go swimming, and it was later, and I didn't know it was below me, and I didn't care. Because to me, the unknown is just the unknown. Actually, that's a topic for another show, but I have done that as well. But looking within your shadow self and looking within yourself, all parts of yourself, the light as well as the dark, isn't a bad thing. It's only going to make you a better person. It's only going to make you brighter, more knowledgeable. Because only you could be the best you can be. No one else is qualified to be you. And if you really think about it from that perspective, you can get through a lot of hardship. You can get through a lot of adversity. You could learn a lot. And you could share a lot. All of us have something to share. Our story, ourselves, our strength. We all have something to share. So it's really up to you if you choose to. But for you to be a better you, sometimes you need to go into that dark corner. You need to go into that subconscious. You need to go into your shadow self. And when you go there, then you, most of the time, will realize at the end of it, it was worth it. Because look who I am today. Now, Tony's also sharing here, said, this would explain why I keep having dreams of myself at 15 of me saying, hey, we need to talk. Maybe that's my shadow self trying to tell me something. Well, yeah. And a lot of times we need to kind of look at what really is the situation and kind of take it apart and take a real good look at it. Look at the shadows of it. Look at the contours. Look at the facets of a situation or a person or a thing or a trigger. And then when you look at it, then you find, wow, wait a minute. This is totally different from how I experienced it. Oh, thank you, Chrissy. And Chrissy's just saying, I look at you, Moon, and I see an old friend, although I haven't known you for that long. Oh, that means a lot. There are connections that we make. And those connections can be pretty hardcore, pretty deep. And just because it's here doesn't mean you can't get hurt. Doesn't mean you can't feel love. Doesn't mean you can't be connected. It's Dr. Prudenhouse, hey? It doesn't mean that it's going to be any different. So let's see here. We have Dr. Proof wants to pop in. Okay. Well, if you'd like to pop in, feel free. I will unlock the seat so you can pop in. Welcome, welcome.
I just want to make sure I'm not hijacking your blab. So if you would prefer to speak, hi there, Don. If you want to speak another time, that would be great. There's a lot of stuff going on here, and I don't know how to address it. And having some of the personality qualities that I have, I'd like to speak with somebody that can be able to maybe help me make some better decisions about it.
Okay. Well, the topic of today's show is about doing shadow work and working with your shadow self. However, if what you need to talk about is not about this topic, we can discuss it. We can discuss it not during the show, but afterwards or something.
Can I get your email?
Absolutely.
What is it?
Okay, I will throw in.
I'm going to write it down.
Okay, super.
And thank you so much.
Oh, no worries. Glad to be of help.
I was happy to see you here. Okay, Moon Phoenix Rising.
There you go. And also, too, for anyone that doesn't have it already.
At Gmail. Is that Gmail? Is that what that is?
It's Gmail. It's Gmail.
No,
it looks like, yeah, it's Gmail.
All right, if you say so.
Yeah, that's what it is.
I don't think so. I think it's Gmail. I'm going to call it Gmail. All right,
you can call it Gmail.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Have a great time. Thank you so much, and enjoy your night.
Oh, super.
Thank you.
We'll definitely connect. And thanks for popping in, Dr. Approved. And also, too, Eric is cool people. And also, we have Evangelos. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Glad you came in. We're in the process of actually closing up the broadcast, but I'm so glad you made it. I hope you make it to the replay, because I know this is something that you're totally going to want to wrap your head around, because you will appreciate this. And I know that you've done probably a lot of this work yourself within your own self. So I would definitely suggest to check out the replay as well. But a lot of this, in summary. Oh yeah, exactly, and I agree with you completely. And he's talking about the fundamentals leading us to the unseen, and it's very true. Now, in summary, a lot of how we're built of the light and the dark. We're built of the things that are on the surface and things that are much deeper. Our consciousness is only a tiny little snippet. It's only the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more to us than meets the eye. So in looking at yourself, you will find yourself better in looking in the dark spaces and corners and cubbies and inner spaces of where you were, things that upset you, and bringing to the surface so you can truly look at it and truly see exactly what makes you you. And when you go into those deep crevices of who you are, into the darkness, you will find light there. You will find strength there. You will find your incredible spirit there as well. Because we're all built of all that, the light and the dark, the seen and the unseen, the superficial and the deep. So in looking at that, all those things are really part of us. And if you really, really look at who you are, from top of your head to tip of your tail, down to your feet, You will find that there's a lot more to you. And if you can tap into that, that's when your strength comes in. When you tap into that, that's when you shine. When you tap into that, that's when you go to the next level, and the next level, and the next level. Think about that for a second. That's some pretty deep stuff, isn't it? But ultimately, in doing this and thinking about this, it's only here to make you better. And this is why I share what I share. Now let's close this up. Close up the broadcast. And there will be a post show that I'll put together as well, so we can discuss it further, and it won't be on record, so you can be more comfortable with sharing what you'd like to share. But I want to thank all of you for spending time with me here on Insight with Moonshadow. It's all of you that do inspire me to share my story, as well as share my wisdom and my knowledge, and for me to continue doing this work and providing the show weekly. So as I say in every show, be strong, be amazing, and be you. Catch you on the flip and see you soon.